The New York Knicks can't let this happen. There's recently been rumors saying that the Utah Jazz want Rj Barrett in exchange for Donovan Mitchell, but in my opinion, I think the Knicks should not trade Rj Barrett whatsoever, especially in this Donovan Mitchell deal. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports, I make opinionative NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention that I recently started up an MMA channel, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. It's been pretty clear over the past couple seasons, the Knicks have been desperately looking to add that superstar to their roster. But whenever an all-star or a superstar would maybe become available, it just seemed like it was never the right fit for the Knicks, or the Knicks were just not aggressive enough in order to acquire that star. But it seems like with Donovan Mitchell, it's a little bit different. And it seems like he may be the perfect player for New York, and the Knicks have also appeared to be a lot more aggressive in the Donovan Mitchell trade talks, as opposed to some of the other stars that became available over the past couple seasons. Now obviously it's not a done deal that Donovan does go to the Knicks, and at this point I would probably say it's 50-50, maybe 60-40, but nonetheless the Knicks are definitely being a lot more aggressive with this Donovan deal than they ever were in the past, or within the past 2 seasons I should say. And it seems like at this point the Knicks offer is based around 4 unprotected first round picks alongside with one of the 3 of Obi Toppin, Emmanuel Quickley, or Quentin Grimes. And in my opinion, I think that's a pretty fair deal. I think that makes a ton of sense for the Jazz because they would be getting a bunch of draft picks, and Danny Ainge in the past has been known to make great decisions with those picks, while also bringing in a pretty good, nice young player as well. And not to mention they would be getting rid of Donovan Mitchell, who obviously is a really good player, but if at this point they were to hold on to him by the start of the season, it would be somewhat of a headache for this team, and at this point I feel like they just want to move on from him, get a nice return for him, and just move on. But obviously it would make a ton of sense for the Knicks, as they would finally get that star in Donovan Mitchell to put alongside Rj Barrett, Jalen Brunson, and even Julius Randle if they actually do keep him. And a team like that would definitely be a playoff team right away, with also a ton of upside going forward due to the young guys they do have. And not to mention Donovan is obviously still really young at this point and is still getting better as the seasons do progress. But recently there's been some reports saying that the Jazz may actually want Rj Barrett in return for Donovan, when in the past there were reports coming out saying that they wouldn't want RJ. And there's also been some other reports that came out recently saying that some people within the Knicks front office are willing to trade away Rj Barrett for Donovan. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that all the people in the front office or most of the people in the front office would trade away Rj Barrett, because they've said multiple times in the past that they wouldn't, but there definitely are some people that would trade away RJ for Donovan within the Knicks front office. Now in my opinion, I don't think the Knicks should trade away Rj Barrett in general, but I especially don't think they should trade him away for Donovan. Because if you were to bring in Donovan, obviously you would be a pretty good team, a better team than they are currently, but you're not really building anything for the long-term future, or you're not really building a championship contender. Because the big issue for Donovan in Utah was he didn't necessarily have star players around him. He had a really nice supporting cast around him, and obviously he had Rudy Gobert, who was an all-star multiple times, but it's a little bit different when you talk about a guy in Rudy Gobert who's obviously great at what he does. He definitely made the all-star game a couple times, and in my opinion he did deserve it, but he's kind of limited based upon the position that he plays and the fact that he doesn't really have much of an offensive game. He's just not one of those guys that's going to put up 20-25 points per night. And in my opinion, if the Jazz had another point guard, shooting guard, or small forward that was a superstar or even an all-star and had the capability of putting up 20-25 points per night, I think that would have really benefited Donovan Mitchell specifically, especially in the playoffs, considering that he's good enough to go up against the brunt of every NBA defense, so just having that extra player would mean a lot. So that's why I don't think the Knicks should trade away Rj Barrett, even besides the skill and potential that RJ has, and I think he has a ton of potential going forward. Even besides that, I just think it wouldn't make much sense to bring in Donovan Mitchell to a team where you don't have that second guy, because then it would be somewhat of a similar situation to Utah, and at that point it would definitely be a worse team than Utah as well. And if you ever wanted to build a championship contender, you would need to either make great great moves in the draft, great moves in the trade market, which would be difficult, especially considering you would trade away some of your young guys and some of your draft picks, but probably more likely you would need to make a big splash in free agency. So it would just make everything a lot more complicated overall. But talking a little more specifically about RJ Barrett, he's a player that I really do believe in going forward. Although he didn't necessarily have a great rookie season, he did do a really nice job at improving his game overall in his second year, and he also did a great job in making improvements to his third year as well. And I mentioned this in a lot of my videos, but whenever you see a player consistently improving, even if it's little by little each and every season, that's a great sign, because what that tells you more so than anything else is that player is a very hard worker. And at the NBA level, everybody's extremely talented. Talent doesn't necessarily take you to that next level, but if you work extremely hard on your game season after season, that does take your game to the next level. So that's obviously something that's extremely important for these younger players and just players in general. So the fact that RJ has proven to have a really good work ethic would definitely bode well for him going forward, but also even besides that, I do think he has a type of talent to at the very least be an all-star type player. And I actually would expect RJ to make the all-star team next season. If he doesn't make it and he's nowhere near it, I would say that would be somewhat of a disappointing season for RJ. So I definitely think it's extremely important to keep RJ on this roster. But whether or not this trade does end up going down or not, I definitely think the Knicks are in a good position going forward. I do think they have a pretty nice young roster based around RJ Barrett, and if they just continue to build through the draft like they have been, and just continue to make good trades, continue to make good free agency signings, I definitely think they would be a team that continuously improves. Now obviously last year was a down year for them, and definitely a pretty huge disappointment, but I think that was mostly due to the fact that Julius Randle just completely broke down and didn't play well whatsoever. And I have mentioned in the past multiple times that I think the Knicks should trade away Julius Randle no matter what the return is, but even if Julius were to stay in this team, I do think he will perform better next season than he did last. And although I don't think he's ever really going to play at that 2020 level ever again, or at the very least for the Knicks he won't do that, I do think he's obviously going to be better than last year. But overall, it's going to be very interesting to see what does end up happening with the Donovan Mitchell saga. Does he stay with the Jazz? I don't necessarily expect that, but does he stay with the Jazz? Does he get traded to the Knicks, or does he get traded to a third team? In my opinion, I definitely think the Knicks have the best offer, and if the Jazz are serious about trading away Donovan, they probably would trade him to the Knicks, unless they somehow like the deal better that was from a different team. So it's definitely going to be very interesting to see what happens with this Donovan Mitchell saga. Now, one thing that I will say is I do feel the Jazz need to trade away Donovan before the season starts, because if they don't, there would be a ton of pressure and stress on their younger guys and on the team as a whole, which obviously wouldn't be good for them. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think the Knicks should trade for Donovan Mitchell? And if they do trade for him, do you think they should trade away RJ Barrett in doing so, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy it, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.